Hey guys, Paeter here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. DC Comics is looking to create a big jumping on point for new readers with, I believe it's called Dawn of DC or Dawn of the DCU or something like that. We'll see what they have in store for us. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, I guess I should say now, where I talk about DC Comics recently released on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service, which is also 1 month after their original publishing date. Basically, in each installment, I'm going to pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. That's not a point that I'm going to force every time. We'll just kind of see what emerges philosophically, morally, stuff like that. But warning, full spoilers for everything that I talk about going forward, so be aware this is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. The idea here is just kind of a relaxed, mostly off-the-cuff reaction to some of these comics. Right now, I'm going to start with looking at comics originally published on January 10th, 2023. And from that, there's no way I'm covering all of these every time. I'm just going to pick and choose. I'm not going to even commit to doing a certain number. It's just going to be what ones jump out to me. So that might be a bunch one week and very, very few another week. We'll see. But this time, I've chosen Lazarus Planet Alpha #1 and The Flash #790. Lazarus Planet Alpha #1, I think we can look at first. And this is supposed to be the beginning of a brief crossover that is kind of, as I understand it, going to be the prelude to the big Dawn of DC year-long initiative that DC is going to be starting very soon. And I felt like in this issue I was kind of coming into the middle of a story that was already going on. I think that there's stuff going on in like a Damian Wayne Robin book that at the end of that is kind of a cliffhanger that blows into this thing here where, from what I understand, there are Lazarus pits around the world that Ra's al Ghul uses, or Ra's al Ghul, however you pronounce it, uses to resurrect himself. And one of those like explodes or becomes volcanic or something. And so all this ash, all this debris from one of these Lazarus pits exploding gets up into the atmosphere and just circulates around the entire planet. And so from the promotional materials, what the premise here of this little series is going to be that a bunch of heroes are having their powers changed and mixed up and stuff like that as a result of the Lazarus pit explosion. And that's why it's called Planet Lazarus, or let's see, Lazarus Planet, or Lazarus Planet Alpha. If you're looking at the cover, that's kind of what that looks like. But I understand the crossover is called Lazarus Planet. Anyway, so yeah, in #1 here, I was just kind of barely following along. It's kind of like, I've been, I was a comic book reader for a couple of decades of my life, but then in my mid-30s, I dropped comics for 7 to 8 years, and just recently, about a year or two ago, picked them up again, and still I'm not completely caught up to the publishing schedule right now. The Flash is the only book right now that I'm completely caught up on. Otherwise, I'm about 1.5 to 2 years behind everything, but I wanted to start recording this Essential Issues Weekly series to coincide with this initiative on DC's part to try and get new readers in. Anyway, but as I've been catching up, as I've been reading comics for years, it's a bit like a soap opera in that there's no good ultimately starting point. We'll see what they do with Dawn of DC, but there's typically no good starting point. You jump in and you're always going to feel like, who the crap are these people? What is going on? I don't know. And eventually you just kind of figure stuff out, or, you figure out enough to feel like some other story down the line is the first one you really know what's going on at the beginning of it. So that's not the case for me with Planet Lazarus. Batman is injured, and there's kind of a team that's being led by his son Damian Wayne, the current Robin. And I have expressed before that I really did not like the idea of Batman having a biological son. I really did not like what I was seeing of Damian Wayne back in the day when he was first introduced. I wasn't following Batman at the time, but I was just seeing enough of him. I was like, I don't like this idea. I don't want another bratty Robin. We already had Jason Todd, and now we've got one that Bruce is obligated to love because it's his biological son, and I don't know if I can put up with that. But years later, when I came back and gave that time in comics another try, I saw that they were doing some neat things with Damian that maybe also in part because of my stage of life in more recent years. I've got two boys that are ages, 15 and maybe it's 14 and 12, 15 and 12. I think it's 15 and 12. Anyway, whatever the reason, I'm able to see what they're doing with Damian now. One thing that I liked about Damian early on, the Peter Tomasi stuff in particular, he was introduced by what's his dude, Grant Morrison. But Grant Morrison's introduction to the character did not connect with me at all. It was a really confusing story. Grant Morrison's writing, except for some of the early stuff he did with JLA, my first exposure to him, early to me. But after that, he just kind of went into a weird direction, kind of postmodern or whatever, and I didn't get it. But what Peter Tomasi did with the Bruce and Damian relationship, I really connected with, because it's about this boy who was raised by assassins, and so he's really jacked up. He's really he predisposed toward evil in a major way, and yet, from the very beginning, you kind of get this, well, and increasingly so, you get the sense he is loyal to his father, and he wants to impress his father. He wants to get the respect of his father. And so you have a character that, like so many of us, has inclinations toward doing wrong, but really wants to do good, and really wants to be affirmed by their parents or their loved ones, the people that are most valuable to them in life. And so when I picked up this issue, and Damian at the beginning, near the beginning, is like, his dad is limping in the background, Batman's limping, I don't know what happened to him. That was something that happened, I guess, previously. But he's standing on something and in front of a group of heroes saying, here's the situation, this is what we're up against, we've got to come together and have a plan, and he's just kind of taking charge of the situation. And there's a time where I would have hated that. But I think I'm ready for this now, and I think what helps that moment is that, the heroes are understandably hesitating as well, but then Batman, struggling just to speak, says, listen to my son. And basically kind of hands over the reins, recognizes he's not up to leading this moment. Someone else needs to do it, and he chooses his son, or at least he chooses to support the initiative that his son took. And it's neat to see this development of Damian Wayne over time and the relationship, and the point now that Bruce is at, where he can say, my son is now ready for this moment, and so it's going to be interesting to see, that they tease the next issue or some kind of later part of this story arc by saying the last stand of Damian Wayne, and that's dramatic comic book language designed to make you think, oh, is he going to die or whatever? But who knows? Could he possibly die? I don't know. He's been around long enough that I could see maybe them feeling like they could kill him off, or not that they would never bring him back. But anyway, I all that to say, I feel like I'm more up for Damian Wayne at this point in my reading of the character. Let's see here. The art style I'm also kind of into. The cover doesn't really display it very well, but the interiors, it's got more of what back in the day would have been called a graphic novel look to it, where it looks a little more painted than traditionally colored, and I think it's got more active and involved pencil lines doing the shading instead of like digital shading, and so it just has just a little bit more of what back in the day would have read to me as an adult type of art vibe. And so I'm into that. What I'm not into as much is this character Monkey Prince, which I'm like, what in the world? I feel completely lost, not knowing who this character is. And Damian kind of represents my feelings on this as well, because Monkey Prince, this guy, he's a monkey human. And he's wearing a red mask. I don't like anthropomorphic animals to start with, so he's off on the wrong foot with me. Whatever his origin is, he's a monkey man. I'm not interested. But as they're divvying up responsibilities, Monkey Prince says to Robin, "Come on, put me in play." And Damian says, "How? Where? You ride clouds and separate your limbs. I don't know what to do with that." And maybe that's an oversimplification. I don't know anything about this character. But just hearing Damien's take on this character, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's another way I'm feeling little more on the same page with Damien these days. Like, I don't have any interest in that. Let's see, what else? Oh, but I will say that Monkey Prince has this nice moment with a character named Black Alice, where she is kind of off on her own. I remember the name of this character, but I don't remember her backstory, so I'll have to kind of have my memory refreshed as I continue reading this story if she continues to stay in it. But I guess she's maybe has like some supernatural powers or something, but she's out of commission, just kind of on the ground, hugging her knees. Obviously been through something traumatic or very sad, and she's just isolating herself. And Monkey Prince kind of comes up to her and introduces himself, and really in a non-invasive way tries to kind of connect with her in a way that she does come around and appreciate. And so it was a nice kind of human moment. Anytime that they can bring some of that, a little bit more of that realism, I feel like that some of this would be labeled today as, I don't know, mental health awareness or something. I remember a number of years ago when that started becoming a thing in comics. But for me, it was just like the introduction of a faux psychological realism that I like in my superhero stories. I like the action and the weird concepts to be fantastical, but I like the characters to have some grounded emotional qualities, to be reacting emotionally and psychologically to the world in a way that seems somewhat reasonable and realistic, as opposed to kind of just shrugging it off or just joking about how, boy, I should be driven insane right now, huh? Which is what you're going to tend to see more in the MCU movies. But so I like this moment, even though I really don't have any interest in Monkey Prince and doubt they're going to be able to change my mind about that. I'm not into the villain of King Fireball just as a name. I guess he's some kind of mystical villain. I don't know what's going on with that. I couldn't even tell like who King Fireball was. There's a guy that's kind of demonic looking, red skin, big red horns. It's like, is this King Fireball? But he's just kind of going by another name, the devil Neza, he says, cowers before no one. Well, is that just maybe like his personal name, Neza? And he's actually the Fireball guy. I don't know what's going on, but I guess it turns out not to be him. There's a moment where, first I should touch on this moment. They teleport in kind of like a climactic moment. One of the mystical characters teleports in a bunch of what would arguably be like third tier characters in the DC universe, but in their subsection of mystical heroes would probably at least be second tier, and some of them first tier. But it's kind of cool to see, and appropriate, I think, with the Lazarus Pit to have a bunch of characters like the Phantom Stranger and Alan Scott, and I think what's his dude, British guy, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. The Keanu Reeves played him in the movie, but he's blonde in the comics, and I'm not remembering his name at the moment. Shame on me. But anyway, so it's nice to see them kind of get their due. We'll see kind of how they're used, though. But one of the cliffhangers at the end of the issue is, I guess, Batman maybe being possessed by King Fireball. I'm not sure what's going on there. But then in the next page, a character shows up who also has red skin, but this time no horns. And he says to Robin, "Don't recognize you from the don't I recognize you from the Island Boy?" I guess they had some island adventure. You know my name. Call me King Fireball. And I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, so this is King Fireball. So I just felt completely lost. I've had this feeling before reading comics, and I know at this point it will pass. You'll eventually feel like you're up to speed enough. But this was kind of a rough jump back into the middle of the action. But anyway, yeah, that's the Lazarus Planet Alpha #1, and I guess it's going to continue. The war rages across the planet in DC Universe Lazarus Planet, which I guess is just the name of the crossover. Then return to Lazarus Planet Omega to witness Damien's last stand. So I don't think I'm going to read even close to all of the tie-in crossover books and stuff like that. I'll just read the ones whose characters would normally interest me, and then I'll read Lazarus Planet Omega, and we'll kind of see what happens there. But anyway, that's Lazarus Planet Alpha. The only other comic that I really was interested in looking at this month was The Flash number 790. And this is the only DC comic that I'm caught up with. I just finished reading 789 just a few days ago, and this one opens up with these aliens, coming from somewhere else to attack planet Earth. They got a ship that's rocketing down to the surface, and the name of the story is The 1 Minute War. And I don't exactly know why it's called that, but I kind of have some ideas of why it might be called that, and I think it could be really cool. The first thing I noticed was the art style, which definitely has more of a almost Saturday morning cartoon vibe that I'm not really into. I do tend to like a more, I don't want to say realistic, because that doesn't make much sense in comics. I guess realistic in some ways. I mean, the more Saturday morning you go, the more you're going to exaggerate certain traits of the body, and the proportions will be off. Like eyes will be really huge, or maybe hands will be really big, or whatever the look is that they're going for. And so it's just heading a little bit in that direction in a way that I'm not into, but I think I can get over it. I appreciate that right from the start we've still got this great focus on Wally that they've had for a while, and specifically dealing with his family life. And I think I've commented to some degree before that I really like this focus on the traditional biological family. Of course, found families are valuable, and we would say that the church is a found family, the ultimate found family. But I think that concept that the church is described in that way because the traditional biological family is meant to be our point of reference and really should be something that is valued, prioritized, that we seek for it to be healthy, and to hold up good examples of healthy families. And I get the feeling that the writer of The Flash has in part been wanting to do that, to really have this representation of a healthy, loving family. And I've really been into it. Let's see here. There is a sense that Wally and Barry Allen are going to be starting to kind of share some panel real estate or whatever, because we do get this scene with Barry talking to Iris, and it looks like she's about to propose to him. And then, with the way the issue ends, clearly it's going to have a Barry focus to some degree going forward. So this story, we might be seeing kind of a transition from an almost exclusive focus on Wally and his supporting cast to a broader focus to the quote-unquote Flash family, which I kind of have to put family in quotes now because, Wally's supporting cast has also been considered or called the Flash family, which consists of, let's see, we've got Jay Garrick, who is just seen in a bar. I don't know why his hair is blonde, though. It should be gray or like brownish gray. So I don't know if that's a coloring mistake there or not. But we've got Wallace West, the new Kid Flash, and Bart Allen, Impulse, is back in the books these days. What else? We've got Jesse Quick and Max Mercury. So these characters are well known to Wally West fans. They were part of, except for the recent Wallace West, who's the new Kid Flash, they were all regular parts of his run. So anyway, we're seeing this broadening out that I think is more than just a throwback to Wally's old supporting cast. I think there may be something more going on, but it will be interesting to see what they decide to do in terms of the focus. Is it going to be equally Barry? Is this the beginning of a transition back to focusing primarily on Barry? I really hope that it really just becomes a large ensemble book, and we can have a great back and forth, equal time kind of relationship given to Barry Allen and Wally West. I understand they might want to ease off of an exclusive focus on Wally now. They've been doing that for I feel like a couple years of publishing now. But anyway, I hope that we get this nice ensemble book because there's so many great characters, and I love seeing them work together and play off of each other. Let's see. So part of what goes on in this, proposal scene, as we see with all these other Flash family characters, is in the middle of Iris proposing, time seems to freeze, and that's something that all the Flash family characters experience. Oops, and we see kind of happening in all of their different situations. And this seems to be related to this invasion that's taking place, and I suspect is the reason it's being called the 1 Minute War. So I'm not sure if at this point time is being frozen, actually. I think it's either being slowed down by the aliens to serve their plan in some way, or all of the speedsters for some reason are getting kicked into like a hyperactive speed mode to compensate for something that is happening on a large scale at a really fast speed. I remember there was a Barry Allen flash-focused issue a number of years ago where he talked about, like, as an instinctual reflex, he would sometimes, like, unconsciously kick into super speed mode. I think maybe that was actually a thing that was true of Wally and said of Wally before Barry said it of him. One of many things that, if that's the case, that they would have stolen from Wally back in the New 52 days and given to Barry like it was always his. But so I'm wondering if that's what's going on, if they're all just reflexively kicking in on a subconscious level into hyperspeed mode. But in any case, I think that the title of 1 Minute War is probably because for everyone else that's not a speedster, this whole story, this whole arc is going to take place within a single 60-second period, which I think is a cool idea. But we'll see how it plays out. The other thing that, of course, is going to be really significant to see how it plays out is the end of this issue, where in the midst of the destruction of the aliens invading, the building that Barry and Iris are in is hit with a bunch of destruction and collapsing ceilings and stuff like that. And Barry discovers, so I guess in this moment at least time unfroze. But Barry looks over and sees Iris's hand emerging from rubble, and he quickly digs her out, and we just have a big splash page, him holding her. She's at least unconscious. We don't know if she's dead, but he is screaming and tears running down his face saying, no, to be continued, and I suspect this is just for dramatic effect, but if so, I feel like it's a little bit cheap, because, if my wife was unconscious, I would not scream to the heavens no until I was, or some realistic real-world equivalent of self-destruction and just dissolving into grief, until I actually knew she was dead. I would be, this is the part where, Barry, you get her to a hospital. You don't take time out to scream no. Unless she really is dead. So, it's hard to know. This is just a kind of a pretty common device that comics will use. So we will see when the next issue rolls around. And I think that's all I have to say about those two issues for now. As always, love getting your thoughts and reactions. You can put those in the comments below. And remember to check out christiangeekcentral.com for tons more content. Thanks for watching. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.